My name is Kira Dalton, and I'm 35 years old. On paper, my life looks fine. That's the word people use when they don't know what else to say. Fine, stable, solid. The kind of life where your bills are on autopay, your retirement account hums along in the background, and your dishwasher runs every night at exactly 10:15 p.m. because off-peak power rates save a few dollars a month. I live alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment with decent light and thin walls. I drive a practical, fully paid-off sedan that starts every time I turn the key. I own exactly one designer handbag and bought it on sale after 3 days of comparing prices and calculating cost per use in a spreadsheet. I am, by all reasonable measures, boring. Except for one thing. 3 years ago, I co-founded a consulting firm that has quietly, steadily grown into something real. We help mid-sized businesses fix what's bleeding money. Operations, processes, messy systems no one understands until they stop working. It's not glamorous, but the numbers in my bank account and the contracts in my email say it's working. And then there's my boyfriend, Dylan Carter. We've been together for about 18 months. We don't live together, but he stays over a lot. He works in marketing for a tech company, has a good job, a nice income, a curated Instagram that makes his life look like a lifestyle brand. Rooftop bars, city views, perfectly staged flat lays of cocktails and cufflinks. On paper, we're fine too. At least that's what I thought until the night his friends laughed at my car. It didn't start that night, though. Like most problems worth noticing, it started small, quiet, and easy to rationalize. About 3 months ago, we were leaving a restaurant, walking through the parking lot, when Dylan paused beside a glossy black SUV. "Now that," he said, whistling low, "is a car. Look at those lines. That's presence." I glanced at it. "Looks expensive." "That's kind of the point." He said it with a half smile, like it was a joke. I laughed, because that was the script we always followed. He made a comment. I played along. Life moved on. We climbed into my car, my not black, not SUV, not anything special sedan, and he ran his hand along the cracked seam of the steering wheel. "Still holding up," he said. "You ever think about upgrading?" "Why? She runs fine." He shrugged. "I don't know. You work so hard. You're successful. Would be nice if your car matched that, you know?" I remember watching his reflection in the rearview mirror as he said it. Something tight fluttered in my chest, but I smoothed it down, reframed it. "He's proud of you," I told myself. "He just wants the outside to match the inside." It was easier to think that than what my gut was quietly whispering. He's a little embarrassed. After that, the comments came more often. We'd be driving, and he'd point at some luxury coupe at a stoplight. That's the kind of car people notice. You see something like that, you just know the driver's killing it. Or we'd pass a sports car parked outside a restaurant, and he'd murmur, "Guy who owns that is doing very well for himself." Always the same tone. Casual, observational, not quite a criticism. Just hints, suggestions. A breadcrumb trail of what he thought success should look like. And my car, the car I'd deliberately kept modest so I could pour money into my business instead of a depreciating asset, did not fit his aesthetic. I should have said something, asked him outright what he meant, but I didn't want to sound insecure or paranoid, so I told myself he was just making conversation. I ignored the way my stomach clenched every time his eyes skimmed over my dashboard like it was something to be tolerated instead of appreciated. Then came the dinner. Dylan had been talking about it for 2 weeks, hyping it up like a movie premiere. "You're going to love them," he said. "We've been tight since college. They're basically family." He wanted them to really get to know me, wanted me to see the side of him he had with his friends. He said it with this bright, eager energy that made me feel like I'd been given a ticket into a more intimate part of his life. We were supposed to meet them at a burger place downtown at 7 p.m. on Friday, the kind of place with long wooden tables, craft beer, and photos of famous musicians on the walls. I picked Dylan up from his apartment at 6:45. He came down dressed like he'd been styled for a casual date night ad. Dark jeans, fitted button-down, watch that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. "Hey, you," he said, leaning in the window before getting in. "You look amazing." "Thanks." I'd put real effort into my appearance. Simple black dress, light makeup, hair actually styled instead of thrown into the usual workday bun. I wanted to make a good impression. On them. For him. As we drove toward the restaurant, I caught him scanning the cars along the street. We passed a shiny red sports car, low to the ground and aggressively loud even while parked. That's nice, Dylan said. You see something like that, you know the guy's going places. Or he just likes red, I said lightly. He laughed, but there was an edge to it I couldn't name. We found parking a block away from the restaurant. Street spot. Nothing fancy. I parallel parked cleanly on the first try, one of my small, ridiculous points of pride, and killed the engine. As we got out, Dylan did that half-subconscious thing he'd started doing lately, a quick glance up and down the street, cataloging the cars around us. His gaze snagged on a sleek dark sedan with tinted windows and custom rims. He didn't say anything, but I saw the flicker of approval in his face. The burger place was busy, but not packed. Warm lighting, a low hum of conversation, the smell of grilled meat and fryer oil wrapping around us as we stepped inside. Dylan spotted his friends at a large booth near the back. 2 women, 2 men, all around our age. He squeezed my hand. There they are. They waved us over with the easy confidence of people who are very used to taking up space. Introductions blurred a bit. Logan was the finance guy. Of course there was a finance guy. Kayla worked in PR. Brianna did something with events. The fourth, Trent, was in sales. They all had that polished, slightly loud energy that says, "We are the main characters in this room." For the first 20 minutes, it was fine. We ordered drinks and appetizers. They traded college stories. Inside jokes I smiled politely through, laughing where the cues were obvious. I answered the standard new person questions, where I lived, what I did for work. I run a consulting firm, I said. Business strategy, operations. We work mostly with mid-sized companies. Logan raised his brows. Nice. That can be lucrative? I smiled. It's going well. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and turned back to his beer. I could feel Dylan watching me, like he wanted me to say more, to make it sound glossier somehow. I didn't. I've never been good at polishing reality for other people's comfort. Then the topic shifted to cars. It started with Logan, of course. Finally upgraded, he said, pulling out his phone to show a photo. Leased a new one last week. Couldn't keep driving that clunker forever. The car in the photo gleamed. Brand logo, front and center, city lights reflecting off its curves like a commercial. Everyone leaned in, made admiring noises. Damn, Trent said. That's presence. You need presence, Kayla added, especially if clients see you pull up. First impression. Dylan laughed a little too quickly. Facts. I just sipped my drink, feeling vaguely like I'd wandered into someone else's value system. Can't be driving around in something ordinary forever, you know, Logan said. Everyone laughed. I kept my face neutral. Ordinary, practical, fine. All the words that had been my friends suddenly felt like accusations. Then Kayla turned her attention to me. What do you drive, Kira? Just a sedan, I said. Nothing special. What kind? I told her the make and model. Mid-range, reliable, low maintenance, the automotive equivalent of my favorite black cardigan. Her nose wrinkled. Not dramatically, but enough. Oh, very practical. It works for what I need, I said. Logan smirked into his beer. Practical's one word for it. The table laughed. I felt Dylan shift beside me, but he didn't say anything. Something in my chest tightened, like a string pulled too far. Then Brianna, who'd been relatively quiet until that point, leaned her elbow on the table, looked at Dylan, then at me, and said, Wait, I'm sorry, I have to ask. When he picked us up for that thing last month, we thought he'd called a rideshare. Kira, seriously, look at his car. Is he your boyfriend or your Uber driver? The laughter that followed was sharp and mean, the kind that doesn't care whether the target is sitting right there. Everyone laughed. Logan, Trent, Kayla, and Dylan, maybe not the loudest, but he didn't shut it down. He didn't say, hey, that's not cool. He didn't reach for my hand or roll his eyes on my behalf. He just froze, gave an awkward, complicit little smile, and looked down at his fries. In the space of 3 seconds, I watched a dozen tiny things rearrange themselves in my head. Every comment about presence, every glance at other cars, every time he'd touched my steering wheel, like he was being gracious about an inconvenience. A hot flush burned up my neck, but my voice stayed even. I set my burger down, picked up a fry, and said, all right, that was it. No scene, no dramatic speech, just 2 words and the quiet decision that I would remember this moment for the rest of my life. The conversation moved on for them. Weekend plans, clubs, bottle service, noise. For me, everything got very clear and very quiet. About 10 minutes later, just as I was deciding whether to go to the bathroom or just leave, the restaurant door opened and someone in a suit stepped inside. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked straight to our table. There you are, he said, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late. Parking was a nightmare. It was Marcus Lee, my business partner. He held out a small ring with a single key on it. Building manager dropped this at my place, he said. Key to the new office. Figured you'd need it for tomorrow's walkthrough. I took it. The metal felt oddly heavy in my hand. Thanks, I said. Appreciate it. Marcus glanced around the table, taking in the stunned faces. Didn't mean to crash your dinner, he added. I'll get out of your hair. Logan spoke up, curiosity overriding manners. Wait, new office? What do you two do? Marcus looked at me like he was asking permission. I shrugged. Go ahead. We run a consulting firm together, he said. Been building it for about 3 years. What kind of consulting? Logan asked. Business strategy, operational efficiency. We help companies restructure, improve margins, that sort of thing. Logan squinted. Is it going well? Marcus smiled, just a little. We just closed a contract yesterday worth about $400,000 over the next 8 months. So yeah, I'd say it's going well. The table fell silent. You could still hear the music, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of other conversations, but at our booth, there was nothing. Dylan stared at me like I'd just shapeshifted. You never told me I was that big, he said. I met his eyes. You never really asked. Marcus checked the time. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Client wants to tour the facility before we present. Sounds good, I said. He nodded to the table. Nice to meet you all. And then he left, the key to our new office still warm in my palm. For a few long seconds, no one said anything. Then Logan cleared his throat. So, you co-own a consulting firm. Co-own? Yes, I said. Started it with Marcus 3 years ago. We have several contracts. The one he mentioned is just the biggest active one right now. Kayla blinked. But your car? What about it? I asked. It's just, if you're making that kind of money, why drive that? I set the key down next to my drink and looked at her. Because I don't need to prove anything to strangers in parking lots, I said. I drive what's practical, I invest the rest. My goal is to build something that lasts, not impress people at stoplights. Brianna's face had gone pale. She suddenly found the condensation on her glass very interesting. I pulled my wallet from my bag, took out enough cash to cover my meal and a generous tip, and set it beside my plate. I'm going to head out, I said calmly. Good meeting you all. I slid out of the booth. Dylan scrambled up. Wait, Kira, I'll come with you. I shook my head. You should stay. Enjoy time with your friends. No, I want to come. I looked at him then, really looked. You sure? I asked quietly. Because when they made fun of my car, you didn't say anything. You just let it happen. I didn't know what to say, he whispered. You could have said anything, I replied. That's rude. Don't talk about her like that. She's my girlfriend, and I don't appreciate it. Literally anything. Instead, you chose silence. His face crumpled. Kira. That says enough, I said. I walked out. He followed me into the cool night air, down the sidewalk, back to my allegedly Uber-adjacent car. The drive to his apartment was silent, thick with everything neither of us said. When I pulled up to his building, he didn't move to get out. So what now? He asked, voice small. I stared straight ahead at the lit windows of his complex. I don't know, I said. I need time to think about whether I want to be with someone who cares more about how things look than what they actually are. That's not fair, he said. You let your friends mock me, I cut in. And you said nothing. Tell me what's fair about that. He had no answer. After a beat, he opened the door and climbed out, closing it more gently than I expected. I watched him walk toward his building, shoulders hunched, then pulled away. The street lights slid over the hood of my practical car as I drove home, the same car I'd had that morning, the same life, the same numbers in my accounts. But as I pulled into my parking space and sat there in the dark, key still in the ignition, I knew one thing for certain. The relationship I thought I was in had shifted, and no amount of polish was going to make it look the same again. Saturday morning, my phone lit up before my alarm. Dylan, we need to talk. 3 words. No emojis. No softening. I stared at the screen from the cocoon of my bed, my eyes gritty from sleep and from replaying last night in endless loops. The restaurant. The laughter. The way he'd stared at me like he was seeing a stranger when Marcus mentioned the contract. I turned the phone face down. When you run a consulting firm, people think your biggest decisions are about money, whether to hire, whether to expand, whether to take on a risky client. They're wrong. The hardest decisions are the ones about who gets access to your time, your mental bandwidth, your peace. Dylan texted again an hour later. Dylan, please, I'm so sorry about last night. Can we talk? I made coffee, answered emails, reviewed a slide deck for Monday's presentation. Every few minutes, my gaze slid back to the upside-down phone like it was quietly pulsing in the corner of my mind. By noon, he'd called twice. I watched his name flash across the screen and let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a notification appeared. New voicemail from Dylan. I put my mug down, pressed play, and held the phone away from my ear like that would soften his voice. Hey, Kira, it's me. Obviously. A humorless chuckle. I just wanted to say I'm really, really sorry about last night. They were out of line. I should have said something. I froze. I hate confrontation. You know that. But that's not an excuse. I want to fix this. Please call me back. He hung up without a goodbye. I listened to it twice. On the surface, it was a good apology. He said sorry, named what went wrong, admitted he should have acted differently. But underneath, the same problem hummed. The thing he was sorry for and the thing I was hurt about were not the same. He was sorry his friends had been out of line. I was hurt that he had silently agreed. I set the phone down and walked to the window. From my third-floor apartment, I could see the parking lot, my car in its usual spot, a scattering of others, a nicer SUV, a compact hatchback with a dented bumper. No one standing beside any of them, delivering a TED Talk on status. Just metal, vehicles, tools. My brain, unhelpful as ever, replayed Brianna's voice on loop. Is he your boyfriend or your Uber driver? I exhaled slowly. I'm not doing this through a screen, I muttered. If he wants to talk, he can come here. As if summoned by my irritation, my doorbell rang at 2:14 p.m. I knew it was him before I even checked the peephole. The shape of his shadow was familiar. I opened the door. Dylan stood there in jeans and a hoodie, hair slightly mussed, like he'd run his hands through it 100 times. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept much. Can I come in? He asked. I considered saying no. Then I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said, then we'll see. He walked in, looking around like my living room had become foreign overnight. The same couch, the same TV, the same shelves lined with books and neat file boxes. But now there was tension in the air, something brittle that hadn't been there before. He sat on the edge of the couch. I stayed standing for a moment, then took the armchair opposite him. The space between us felt wider than it was. I'm sorry, he started immediately. Kira, I am so sorry. For what? I asked. He blinked, thrown. For what they said. For not defending you. For all of it. I folded my arms, not to be defensive, but to keep my hands from shaking. Okay, I said, why didn't you defend me? I told you I froze. I didn't want to cause drama. They were drunk and joking, and they weren't that drunk, I cut in. And it wasn't a joke. It was mean. I know, he said quickly. I know that now. No, I said quietly. You knew it then, too. You just decided staying comfortable with your friends was more important than standing up for me. He flinched like I'd slapped him. That's not what Isn't it? I asked. Silence stretched between us, fragile and loud. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I didn't think. It happened so fast. That's the thing, I said. What we do without thinking tells the truth about our priorities. You didn't think because you didn't have to. You knew they wouldn't turn on you. I was the only one at that table who could be safely laughed at. He stared at the carpet. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of my fridge. Finally, he exhaled. You're right. I messed up. I hate that I made you feel like that. You didn't make me feel anything, I said. You revealed something. His gaze snapped back to mine. Revealed what? That you've been embarrassed by my car for months, I said calmly, and by extension, embarrassed by the way I choose to live. That's not true, he protested immediately. I'm not embarrassed by you. But you are embarrassed by how I look on paper, I said. By the car I drive, the clothes I wear, the fact that I don't perform my success the way you think I should. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He shook his head, searching for words. You're successful, Kira. You're incredibly successful. And nobody knows because you're so low-key about it. I hate it when people assume you're less than you are. So you're bothered by what they think, I said. Not by what I am. Yes, he said, like he'd found something solid. Exactly. You deserve recognition. You deserve to look like what you've achieved. Or, I said, my voice soft but edged, you want your girlfriend to look like what you think you've achieved. He flinched again. That's not fair, he whispered. Isn't it? I asked. I could see the battle playing out across his face in real time, his instinct to defend himself wrestling with the dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't being unreasonable. When was the last time you asked about my work? I asked. Really asked. Not just how's it going, while scrolling your phone. He frowned, thinking. The longer he took, the clearer the answer became. I don't know, he admitted finally. And yet one mention of a contract number, and suddenly you're shocked, I said. You heard 400,000 and realized the way you've been mentally ranking me doesn't match reality. That's not... You thought I was a regular girl with a regular job, I said, not letting him finish. On your level or below, easy to fit into your story, easy to show off when convenient and tuck away when not. He swallowed hard. That's not how I saw you, he said. I swear it's not. Then how did you see me? I asked. His shoulders slumped. He stared at his hands. I liked that you were grounded, that you didn't care about flashy stuff. It made me feel balanced, like we were good for each other. But, I prompted. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were wet. But sometimes around my friends, I felt like they didn't get that, he said. Like they thought you were, I don't know, ordinary. And that made me feel small by association, like they weren't taking me seriously because of what you drive, how you dress. There it was, not evil, not villainous, just small, insecure, human, and absolutely incompatible with the way I wanted to be loved. So you were ashamed, I said quietly. Not of me, maybe, but of how I looked to other people. He didn't deny it this time. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't even realize that's what it was until you said it out loud. That's the problem, I said. You didn't realize. You didn't question the comments about cars, or your friends' hierarchies, or why it bothered you so much that my life doesn't look expensive on the outside. He leaned forward, hands clasped, like he was praying. What do you want me to say? He asked. Tell me what to say, and I'll say it. I don't want you to recite the right lines, I said. I want you to actually believe that my worth and yours isn't parked in a driveway somewhere with a luxury logo slapped on the front. He sat back deflated. I can change, he said after a moment. I can do better. I can be better. Maybe you can, I said. But I don't know if I want to be the person you practice on. His head snapped up, panic in his eyes. So that's it? We're just done? I didn't say that, I said. I said I don't know. I need time. He exhaled shakily. How much time? I don't know that either. He looked around my apartment again, like he was trying to memorize it in case he never saw it again. His gaze landed on the neat row of binders on my shelf. Client files, financial reports, everything labeled in clear block letters. You've built so much, he said quietly. I should have been proud of that, not whatever I was. You were proud, I said, as long as it could be photographed. He winced. I'm not asking you to be perfect, I added, softer now. I'm asking you to be honest. Do you want to be with me, or do you want to be with someone who makes you look more successful to your friends? I want to be with you, he said immediately. But you also want the car, I said, and the optics, and the validation. That's not... Don't answer now, I cut in. Sit with it. Actually, sit with it. Because if what you want is a girlfriend who fits into those photos, who makes people say, wow, you're killing it, that's fine. You're allowed to want that. But I'm not going to change who I am to fit into your feed. Tears spilled over onto his cheeks. I wasn't used to seeing him cry. It made him look younger, almost boyish, less curated. I'm asking for another chance, he said hoarsely, to prove I'm not as shallow as I seemed last night. I believed he meant it in that moment. I also knew moments are easy. Patterns are harder. I heard you, I said, but I'm not making any decisions today. He nodded slowly, like his neck suddenly weighed 100 pounds. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll give you space. He stood, walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, he said without turning around. I've never been ashamed of who you are. Just what people might think. I let the words hang there, sharp and revealing. Exactly, I said. He closed the door behind him. For a while, I just stood there, listening to the fading echo of his footsteps down the hall. Then I walked to the window. From my vantage point, I saw him cross the lot and stop beside my car. He looked at it for a long second, like it was a problem he couldn't solve. Then he walked on toward the street, where a rideshare, ironically, pulled up to the curb. He got in. The car drove away. I looked down at my own keys sitting on the table, the new office key glinting among them. Two worlds, I thought. One quietly building something. One desperate to be seen as already having it. And I was standing in between, trying to decide which one I wanted to belong to. Monday morning came with the soft, metallic click of my apartment door locking behind me, and the sharp bite of cold air as I stepped outside. I didn't sleep much. My thoughts kept spiraling between Dylan's apology, the restaurant, the laughter, and the uncomfortable truth that sat heavy in my chest. He wasn't ashamed of me. He was ashamed of how I looked to other people. That distinction mattered more than he realized. But work didn't care about my emotional turmoil. Work demanded sharpness, clarity, precision. and I was good at work. At 8:32 a.m., I pulled into the lot of our new office building. Still the same reliable sedan, still humming evenly, still ordinary in the best possible way. The building manager had left all the paperwork in the front lobby. The smell of fresh paint and sawdust lingered as I made my way down the hall toward the office suite that would soon have our company name on the frosted glass. Marcus was already inside, sleeves rolled up, leaning over a blueprint on the folding table someone had set up over the weekend. He looked up the second he heard my footsteps. "You look like you slept as much as I did," he said. "That bad?" I dropped my bag onto a nearby chair. "That bad," he confirmed. "Coffee?" "Is that a question?" He handed me a cup from the cardboard tray on the floor. It was still warm. I took a long sip. "You're a saint," he smirked. "I've been called worse." I slid onto the edge of the table beside him. "Walk me through what we're thinking for the layout." He didn't comment on the tightness of my voice, or the faint puffiness around my eyes, or the way I kept rubbing my thumb absently against the coffee cup lid like I needed something tactile to anchor me. That was one of the reasons we worked well together. Marcus noticed everything, but he chose carefully what to address. "The conference room goes here," he said, pointing at the blueprint. "We'll need soundproofing. The client we're presenting to next month is obsessed with confidentiality." "Understood." "And I spoke to the contractor about the wiring. They'll run the additional outlets along this wall. Should be fine." "Good." I nodded, but my attention drifted to the clean lines of the office space through the wide glass window. The place wasn't finished yet, but I could already picture it. Desks arranged in a collaborative curve, a quiet break corner, the scent of new carpet, sunlight spilling across the floor in slow afternoon arcs. Growth, stability, work I'd built from the ground up. Dylan had barely asked about any of it. The realization felt heavy. Marcus cleared his throat. "So," he said carefully, "how was Friday night?" I stared at the blueprint like the answer might be labeled between the walls. "It was illuminating," I said finally. "That bad?" he asked. "Worse." He gave me a sympathetic grimace. "I hate being right." "You're not right," I said reflexively. His eyebrows lifted. I sighed. "Fine, you're a little right." He chuckled softly and went back to the blueprint. "Want to talk about it, or do you want to bury yourself in floor plans and distract yourself with fire code compliance?" I hesitated. Talking wasn't usually my first instinct. I preferred analysis, action, solutions. But if I couldn't be honest with myself, what chance did I have of being honest with Dylan? "His friends mocked my car," I said flatly. Marcus stilled. He didn't say what, or seriously, or any of the dozens of things he could have. Marcus was smart enough not to ask questions he already knew the answer to. He waited. "They laughed, called it an Uber," I said, and Dylan said nothing. Marcus's jaw tightened just barely. "Ouch!" I looked down at my coffee. "Yeah. You okay?" "I'm processing." He leaned back slightly, arms crossing. "Kira," he said in that slow, even tone he used when he was thinking 12 steps ahead. "You know who you are. You know what you've built. You don't need a car to validate that. Not to your clients, not to the people who matter." "I know." "But you do need someone who respects that choice," he added gently. "Someone who's not embarrassed by the fact that you don't perform success the way they expect." My throat tightened unexpectedly. I just hate that he didn't defend me. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, that's the part that sticks." "It keeps replaying in my head," I admitted, over and over, him sitting there, not saying a word. "Sometimes silence says the loudest thing," Marcus murmured. I closed my eyes for a moment, let the truth settle. A few hours later, we met the client in the new office and walked him through the proposed setup. The meeting was smooth, productive, energizing. It reminded me who I was outside of Dylan's insecurities. By early afternoon, we were signing final prep documents for the project. When we stepped outside into the sunlight afterward, Marcus elbowed me lightly. "Lunch?" I hesitated. My mind had been a battlefield all morning, but nodded. "Yeah, lunch." We walked to a cafe down the street. The tables outside were half full, the air warm enough for people to linger. Once we sat, Marcus didn't waste time. "So, what's the plan?" I stirred the ice in my drink with my straw. "He wants to talk." "Do you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me does. Part of me doesn't. Mostly, I don't know if I want to hear what he'll say or if I want to hear what he won't say." Marcus nodded slowly. "Can I give you unsolicited advice?" "You always do." He grinned. "Fair. Here it is anyway. Don't make long-term decisions from short-term guilt or temporary loneliness." I blinked. "Is that from a podcast?" "No," he said. "That's from watching a lot of people stay with the wrong person because they couldn't handle the silence." The truth of it hit harder than I expected. I texted him, I admitted quietly. Told him we could talk Friday. Coffee, neutral place. Marcus lifted an eyebrow. Neutral place? If we had this conversation at my place, he'd stay. And if you had it at his place? I'd feel pressured. Good, Marcus said. Control the environment. Keeps the emotion from driving the bus. I snorted softly. You're really committed to metaphors today. I'm committed to you not getting dragged back into something that hurts you. The words caught me off guard. He didn't say them with any ulterior motive, just matter-of-fact truth. I swallowed. Thanks. Always. Friday at 2:54 p.m., I walked into the coffee shop early. I chose a table near the window, neutral, bright, public enough to prevent theatrics. I ordered an iced latte because holding a cold drink made me feel more grounded. At 3:10 p.m., Dylan rushed in, breathless, hair wind-tossed. He spotted me immediately. Hey, he said softly. Hey. He slid into the seat across from me. His hands were trembling slightly. I'm sorry I'm late, he said. It's fine. He took a breath, one of those slow, bracing ones people take before ripping off emotional bandages. I've been thinking nonstop, he said. About everything, about how I acted, about what it meant, and I realized something. I waited. I've been insecure, he said. About myself, about my job, about not being as successful as I want to be, and I projected that onto you. I didn't respond. He continued. When my friends assume you're less, it makes me feel like I'm less, like they're judging me by association, and that's messed up. That's not fair to you. That's not who I want to be. His voice cracked. I'm ashamed of that, he said quietly. Not of you. Of me. It was honest, raw, vulnerable. But honesty doesn't always undo damage. I sipped my drink. Thank you for saying that, I said softly. And I believe you. But that doesn't change the fact that when it mattered, you didn't defend me. I know, he whispered. And that was wrong. I swear I'll never do that again. I believed he meant that too. But I also believed he didn't yet understand how deep the wound was, or how long it would take to heal. Here's the thing, I said. I could have a luxury car tomorrow. I could buy clothes you'd be proud to show off. I could curate my life to look expensive, but I don't want to. That's not who I am. I know, he said quickly, and I love that about you. But you didn't love it when your friends laughed, I said, or when you felt small next to them. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't deny it. I want to be better, he said again. Please give me a chance to show you. I'm not sure this is something you can prove, I said. Not with gestures or promises. It has to be internal, and I don't know if you're there yet. The hope in his eyes trembled. Can we try? He asked. I inhaled slowly. I'll think about it, I said, but I'm not promising anything. He nodded, defeated but grateful for even that sliver. We left the cafe without touching, without lingering, without false closeness. When I got into my sedan, the seat felt familiar, safe, mine. And as I pulled away, watching Dylan shrink in my rearview mirror, I wondered, was I driving away from a salvageable relationship, or from the last illusion I needed to let go? For the next month, Dylan tried. Hard. He didn't say the word car once. He asked questions about work. Real questions, not the vague check-ins he used to toss out while scrolling his phone. He texted supportive things before big meetings. He even looked impressed, genuinely impressed, when our firm signed a new logistics client with a multi-year contract. On the surface, these were all the things I had once wanted. And yet, each effort came with a faint metallic echo, like the sound of a spoon tapping a glass that's already cracked. Was he changing, or was he performing? The difference mattered, but from the outside, they looked exactly the same. The first test came 2 weeks after the coffee shop conversation. We were getting dinner at a quiet Italian place when Trent, one of Dylan's friends, walked in with his wife. We hadn't seen them since the infamous burger night meltdown. Trent froze when he spotted us, guilt splashing across his face before he smoothed it into a smile. Dylan, Kira, hey, didn't expect to see you here. I stiffened instinctively. Trent's wife gave me a nervous half-wave. She wasn't at the dinner, but she'd clearly heard about it. Her eyes flicked toward me, then toward Dylan, then back to me. Hey, Dylan said, his voice casual but firm. Good to see you. There was an awkward pause. Listen, Trent said, rubbing the back of his neck. About that night. It was out of line, Dylan said immediately, cutting him off. And it's not happening again. Trent blinked. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He looked at me. Sorry, Kira. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't profound. But it was unexpected. I nodded. Thank you. They continued to their table. Dylan sat back, exhaled. I forced a smile. Thanks for that. Of course, he said. No more letting people treat you like that. My chest tightened, not in pain, but in something fragile and almost hopeful. But as dinner went on, I noticed the way Dylan looked at me each time he said something supportive. Like he was checking whether he'd scored points. Like this was a test, and he was waiting for his grade. Every gesture felt careful, measured, rehearsed. And deep inside, I felt something unsettling. The quiet suspicion that he was trying to fix the symptom without ever understanding the illness. A week later, I met him at his apartment for dinner. For the first time in months, he had cooked. Actual food, not takeout. Fresh pasta, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables. A candle flickered in the middle of the table like he was trying to summon romance out of thin air. "This looks amazing," I said. He grinned nervously. "I just wanted to do something nice. You've been working so hard lately." We ate, we talked about work. He asked thoughtful questions. He even laughed when I told a story about Marcus accidentally locking himself out of the new office by leaving the temporary key inside. I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to relax. But every time Dylan asked another good question, I could feel the invisible script in the air, lines memorized, not lived. At one point he hesitated, then ventured carefully. "I've been thinking, if you ever wanted to upgrade your car..." I put down my fork. Dylan froze. "No, I mean, not because you need to," he rushed. "Just because you deserve something nice, something that reflects your success." And there it was. The same belief, dressed up differently, but unmistakable. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. Dylan swallowed. "Did I mess up again?" I sighed. "It's not about messing up. It's about what you value. And I think you still associate success with how it looks from the outside." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it because he knew it was true. The next major shift happened when he finally talked about his ex. Not in the casual, sanitized way he had before, but honestly. We were sitting on his balcony, the city lights glowing below us, a breeze cutting through the warm night air. Dylan was nursing a beer. I had a glass of water I wasn't really drinking. He stared at the skyline. When I was with Samantha, she cared about image. A lot. I raised an eyebrow. "So I've heard." He huffed a humorless laugh. "Yeah, well, she loved expensive things. Cars, clothes, restaurants. She said it was because she worked hard and deserved nice things. And maybe that's true, but it exhausted me. I kept feeling like I had to keep up, or she'd leave." I listened, saying nothing. He continued, voice low. "When we broke up, I told myself I wanted someone different, someone grounded, someone who didn't care about labels or brands." He looked at me then, eyes soft. "Someone like you." And for a moment, my heart clenched. For him, for me, for the version of us that might have worked in a parallel world. "But," I said quietly. He winced. "But I think part of me still wanted the validation, the look how great we look together thing, even if I didn't admit it." "And that part is the one that laughed in silence at the restaurant," I said. He didn't argue. He just nodded, ashamed. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I really am." "I know," I said. "But I don't know if you're trying to grow or trying to keep me." "I'm trying to do both," he admitted. I looked away, throat tight. That was the problem. You can't grow for someone else. It never lasts. By the fourth week, the pattern was clear. Dylan was saying the right things, doing the right things, correcting the right behaviors. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw him at that restaurant booth, laughing at someone else's joke, pretending not to hear, waiting for the moment to pass so he wouldn't look uncool. Every time he complimented my car, a tiny voice whispered, "He doesn't mean it. He's just trying. He's performing approval for you, not believing it within himself." And I couldn't unhear it. Trust, once cracked, doesn't break cleanly. It splinters. It embeds itself in places you don't expect. In car rides, in compliments, in pauses between conversations. By the end of the month, I knew the truth even if I didn't want to admit it. We were dragging a dying relationship uphill, hoping it would magically breathe again at the top. And somewhere along the way, we had become incompatible in ways effort could not fix. The decision crystallized a few days later. It was supposed to be a date night, a fresh start dinner. Some light food, a glass of wine, a soft reset. Instead, I sat across from Dylan in a dimly lit restaurant and realized, with a bone-deep heaviness, that the sinking feeling in my chest was not fear of losing him. It was exhaustion from trying to hold us together. He was talking about booking a weekend trip, somewhere nice. Just for us. His eyes were warm, hopeful, fragile. And I knew. This wasn't a relationship anymore. It was a performance neither of us could keep up. I set my fork down. "Dylan," I said softly, "we need to talk." His smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I took a breath that felt too big for my lungs. "I don't think this is working." Silence. Then, "What?" His voice cracked. I swallowed. "We've been trying, but the trust isn't there anymore. I can't unsee that night, and I can't pretend every new gesture isn't a correction instead of a belief." "I've changed," he said desperately. "I swear I have." "Maybe," I said gently, "but I don't trust it, and that's not fair to either of us." Tears filled his eyes. "Please don't do this," he whispered. "I think you deserve someone who values the same things you do, who matches the image you want. And I deserve someone who doesn't need to unlearn embarrassment to love me." His tears fell. "Kira," he said, voice breaking, "please." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I really am." And just like that, it was over. Not dramatic, not explosive, just a quiet ending to something that had already been fading. It took 6 weeks to get here. 6 weeks of trying, hoping, doubting, pushing. 6 weeks of seeing clearly what I'd once chosen not to see. But when I left the restaurant that night and walked toward my sedan under the yellow glow of streetlights, for the first time in a long while, the car felt like home. Breakups don't shatter in one moment. They dissolve quietly, like fog thinning as the sun rises, until suddenly you can see everything clearly. The night I ended things with Dylan, I drove home with the window cracked open, cool air brushing my face. My chest hurt, but not with regret. It was something else, relief maybe, or simply truth settling into place. The next morning, my apartment felt unnervingly silent. No toothbrush beside mine, no charger borrowed, no half-empty sparkling water cans on the counter. Just me. Me and the hum of the dishwasher at 10:15 p.m. Me and my spreadsheets. Me and my practical sedan parked below the window. For the first week, Dylan texted every day. "Dylan, are you sure this is what you want?" "Dylan, can we talk?" "Dylan, I miss you." I answered only once. "Kira, please give me space." After that, he stopped messaging. Silence filled the space where our relationship had once existed. Unexpectedly, I felt calmer. It's strange how peace often sounds like absence. Work consumed the next few weeks. We hired 2 new consultants. We finalized floor plans for our new office. Our logistics client renewed their contract for another year. One afternoon, Marcus came into my office holding 2 lattes, handing one to me without comment. He looked at me carefully, like he was gauging the temperature of a room he'd walked into countless times. "You okay?" he asked. I took a sip. Warm, smooth, grounding. "I think so," I said. More okay than I expected. Marcus leaned against the doorframe. "Good. You look lighter." "I feel lighter." He raised an eyebrow. "Wait until the office furniture gets delivered. Then you'll feel exhausted." I laughed. A real laugh, not the restrained, polite kind I'd mustered during my weeks with Dylan. "You know what I mean," he said softly. I nodded. Because I did. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. I met someone. His name was Evan Brooks, and he wasn't flashy. He didn't enter my life with the cinematic intensity of a drama. He didn't walk in with fireworks or grand gestures. He walked in with a stapler. Literally. He worked with one of our client companies. One day, during a chaotic meeting, with a poorly prepared team, he saw me searching for a stapler to bind a last-minute packet and wordlessly slid his across the table as if he'd been waiting for the moment. It was simple, silly, almost forgettable. Except I didn't forget. Because the next week, he remembered how I took my coffee. The week after, he remembered what days I had client calls and texted quick, "You've got this" messages, not to impress me, but because he noticed. He drove an older hatchback. The paint was chipped in one corner. The back seat had a reusable grocery bag and a stack of gym towels, and I didn't feel embarrassed standing next to it, or worried what anyone would think, or bracing for a comment. It was just a car. He was just a man. And I was just myself. We began talking more, first in meetings, then outside of them. Nonsensical things, simple things, favorite coffees, road trip playlists, the best way to prevent pasta from sticking. Conversations that didn't measure worth or status or subtle hierarchies. Conversations that made me feel seen. One evening, after a long day, we ended up in the same elevator leaving the office. He pressed the lobby button and glanced at me. "Rough day?" he asked. "Long day," I said. "You look like you could use dinner, or sleep, or both." I chuckled. Accurate. He hesitated, then said, "Would you want to grab dinner? No pressure." Something in his voice, gentle, thoughtful, honest, made it impossible to say no. Dinner turned into a walk turned into laughter turned into comfort. I didn't feel the need to be perfect, or polished, or visibly successful. I could just exist. And he seemed grateful for every version of me. Messy, tired, hungry, laughing. There was no script, no performance, no checking if he'd said the right thing. Just presence. 3 months after my breakup with Dylan, I was walking downtown after grabbing coffee when I saw him. He was standing beside a shiny luxury SUV. Dark metallic paint, tinted windows, gleaming rims. A car chosen for status, not for function. A woman stood next to him. She was tall, stylish, impeccably dressed. I'd never met her, but she had the same curated aesthetic as his ex-girlfriend, Samantha, the one who loved expensive brands. They were laughing about something, leaning comfortably toward each other. Dylan glanced up and saw me. He froze for a moment. Then he smiled, small, polite, sad. I smiled back. Not to rekindle anything, not to reopen wounds, just acknowledgement. A quiet, mature understanding. We were not right for each other. We were not ruined people, just mismatched ones. And he seemed happy. I hoped he was. I walked past without stopping, my coffee warm in my hands. Evan texted me just as I reached the next corner. Evan, made extra pasta. Want some? I smiled. Kira, be there in 10. I crossed the street toward my sedan, my plain, practical, fully paid-off sedan, and unlocked the door. The engine turned over smoothly, humming like a quiet promise. I drove away without looking back. People say the right relationship will elevate you. But what they forget is that true elevation feels like ease, not performance, not hierarchy, not status. The right person doesn't make you wish you were shinier. They just make you glad to be yourself. My car hasn't changed. My habits haven't changed. My life is still steady, modest, and practical in all the ways that make sense for me. And someone who sees my values, not my appearance, likes me exactly this way. Sometimes the biggest blessings come disguised as humiliations. Sometimes a single dinner can reveal